What's going on, everyone? Episode 7 of Conversations with Coaches. I'm going to be joined by Dave Osborne today, which will be a fun one. He is a PhD in, basically it's like exercise science education, but he'll explain a little bit better than I can. He'll jump on and send a live join request. He did his thesis? Wow, that's a tough one. Thesis, thank you. He did his thesis on remote coaching, believe it or not, and the intricacies involved in that. So that's going to be really, really interesting because this is literally a guy who has a PhD in coaching. Lots of fun stuff. He's super jovial. He's very, very funny. He is not someone who lives with a lot of hype or anger, and he's super strong. He's total 2K as well, in sleeves. And he also owns Osborne Performance Systems, which is a gym in the Pacific Northwest in like Akawachi something or other, Florida. Or not Florida, I'm sorry. I'm in Florida. In Washington area. I have no idea how it's pronounced, so he can fill all that stuff in for us as soon as he gets on here. He did message me that he was ready to go, so he should hop on any minute. I want to make sure I didn't miss it because there's a whole shitload of notifications here. I didn't miss it. All right, cool. So as soon as he gets on, there it is, he joined, and there's the view request. We'll get him to join. Get him to come through. One day I'll learn how to do the group thing and then go live. Apparently you can do that. I don't know how to use technology, so maybe somebody will teach me that. Also, someone teach me how to use Google Sheets. That would be cool.
Oh, good, it worked.
All right, wait. Tell me you're a gamer without telling me you're a gamer.
Well, I was hoping these were gonna connect to it, but didn't want to. It's my hearing's fucking shit from artillery all those years.
Your hearing is shit because you probably put the video game headphones loud as fuck.
You're not wrong. No, right. You're not wrong.
So I have a history with Dave, and I gotta like preface this because I made a story post once that says like if you have a gamer handle, your total probably sucks. And within like 3 minutes, Dave's like, "Have you seen my total? And do you know my gaming handle?" This is why I have Dave on, because one, he's never afraid to push back, but push back in a jovial way, not in a angry way. He's not afraid to prove someone wrong or prove someone right, which I fucking love. But also, he is someone who really understands prioritizing structure and schedule. Because let me put some things out of here. He owns a gym. He coaches remote. He coaches in person. He is a father. He does compete. He travels to do things with family, with everything, for competitions, and still managed to get his PhD at the same time. So for all of you 5 people who like to say you don't have time to meal prep, shut up.
Shit. Well, and that was, I remember meal prep, that's just recently within the last year or two, something I've really been able to conquer better, right? And really stay on top of. But it's just kind of a process of all that habit building over the years where oh, okay, well, I know just enough to have a schedule where I can do school, I can be a present dad, be a present husband, right? Still run the gym, still do online clients, still do in-person coaches, still compete. And then I felt like that was my limit. Right. But luckily, I'm surrounded by great lifters, great coaches as peers, right? And just constantly motivated that, maybe I could do a little bit better. Maybe I could wake up, that half hour earlier so that I can start my day at a right time where I can get that morning walk, right? Or I can prep the breakfast I need to prep and be able to stay on top of, all of my nutrition stuff. And then just kind of start taking away those excuses of, oh, I don't have the time. Right. Well, I have the money then. So I'm going to fucking make my wallet hurt if I make poor nutrition, time strategy things. If I don't meal prep and I have to order out, cool, I'm going to order out the most basic fucking chicken and rice, right? And I'd be like, oh, I could have fucking made this and not paying $30 for it. And you make your wallet hurt enough times, so you're kind of okay, I'm on board now. I can do a little prep. Found the time.
The whole business model is based around your laziness because it's the most basic freaking food, chicken, rice, pork, and corn at 5 times the cost of what it would be to make it yourself. The convenience of Chipotle is basically laughing in your face of lazy.
Totally. I mean, it's just, if you can't find the motivation at the beginning, create a little bit more pain, and all of a sudden you're motivated to get out of that pain, whether it's physical or financial, right? Oh, cool. That's all you needed was just that little bit of momentum building for yourself. Just that little bit of uncomfortableness to say I need to make a change here.
A cool fact and figure once where someone was talking about effective ways to save, right? It's going to go right along with what you said. And he talked about if you took away eating out once a week, which is a cost of an average of $50 and eating out just once a week at a restaurant, and invested that and you got like an 8% return in the compounding effect, it was something like the fact of it would literally make you over the time of compounding something like $1,000 a year versus costing you $3,000 a year. So eating out like every
Sure.
for $50 costs you $3,000 in losses, because you don't spend $3,000 a year, but the average loss, if you compare it, how much it would compare, you 3 times more money than lost. It was like, wow, insane.
Plus plus, you know, you're getting all the benefits of the better nutrient density, right? From making it at home and having control over your own eating and what foods are going in and what oils are being used and all that stuff. That's kind of like my trick. You know, if I start losing too much weight, it's like, okay, I gotta eat out a couple times, get some cheap little oils in there to make that weight pop back up again and hold band.
See, losing too much weight isn't something that I have to do. I was
like, oh, you don't have to eat out 5 times a week to keep 10 pounds on? Oh, that must be nice.
You put the pounds on quick. It's taking them off.
Yeah.
No problem. But like, I'm already at like the I'm at the lowest end of my weight class. I'm too tall for 81 and too small for 98.
Yeah.
Like, I get to toggle. And of course, every now and again, I get the urge to just walk into a meet at 220. And you know, the meet director's always looking at me like I'm stupid because I'm 206. He's like, "Why didn't you just cut?"
I didn't want. It was performance only today.
Yeah, I've done it. Chris and I were talking about it last week. I'm like, at a point where I do this for fun, and I find ways to make it fun. So
yeah,
this is awesome. All right, so Dave is also the reason I know why Reddit exists, because I don't live in the real world. And I didn't know what Reddit was, and Dave is on there as Big Coach D, which is an homage to his adult film days when he used to go by the same name. And so, you're welcome. You're gonna get a lot of messages now.
So yeah. All the bears out there are like, interesting. Tell us more.
He's weight, he's hairy, and he's strong. Sold. So Dave is someone who has contributed to this sport in ways so many other people can't, because he has educated the newer lifter probably more than 99% of coaches have. And I'm going to say that very, very generously and truthfully, because a lot of coaches just put coaching in their bio, but they don't actually go out of their way to coach people without asking for anything in return, right? 3 spots available, DM me for coaching, whatever. They've spent years literally just teaching people the principles of powerlifting through Reddit. And if you go into Reddit, Big Coach D, you will see the amount of information that he has put there for free that is astronomical. This is a PhD in this, basically, giving away everything for free for you to learn to be a better lifter, athlete, or coach right there. And if you haven't taken that time to use that resource, you also don't meal prep and you're lazy.
I think Reddit for me, because there wasn't a big like powerlifting scene in Washington, right? Like I have buddies in the Tri-Cities with like the Ryan Kennelly crew, and then some buddies on the West Side. But besides that, when we were getting started, there really wasn't anything around locally. And so we hopped onto the internet, and you find Elite FTS and T Nation and everything else, but like there wasn't a lot of like interaction between just the people on the websites, right? Like that's why the Table Talk forum is so cool now, is that they have that Discord going, right? And it's all those same kind of principles of, okay, we need to find some sort of community here and be able to pass this information along, because when I started, like all you had was Cube and 531, and people are trying to like create fucking training cycles out of these fucking programs, and just it was blind leading the blind. But like eventually over enough time, you get enough people like talking back and forth. This worked for me. This worked for me. This didn't work, and we started like putting together better and better training cycles as a community. And now we're at the point where the level of specialization and all the different things taken into account with just regular programming is insane compared to like 2010.
Yes, I'm laughing at that because I'm very influenced by the Russian periodization models and systems.
Yeah,
both concurrent and linear. And my programs look like that, obviously, because if someone's strong enough, I'll use undulation. If they're not strong enough for the beginning stages, I'll use a more linear progression to get them up, and accelerated block protocol, which I've gone. I speed the process up so each block looks like what 3 of their blocks look like. And Dave's familiar with we rehab your quad. But it's funny because I was looking at one of the more current I'm going to not put them out by name, but they put out an email and it was like talking about their evidence of what they've noticed over a couple of years of coaching now is that it basically the first week of the wave is like a lighter intro block. And then there's 4 weeks of intensification followed by a 1 week lower phase. And I'm like, 5-week phases, first week easy, 4 weeks harder, linear progression. I'm like, wow, way to stumble on what's already been done for 45 years.
Yeah, the wheel keeps on turning, doesn't it? Oh, look at this brand new way.
Yeah, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I'm like, but this was data collection for you? It's literally been out there forever.
Absolutely.
I'm like, 24 years old and you've not done this very long that you just came to this conclusion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and you're just kind of like stumbling upon it for the first time. Like, oh, this is clearly the way training has to go, right? This is the only one way that's going to work.
Love that. All right. I want to talk about something that's really, really unique, and that's your thesis.
Yeah.
How did you get the thesis for your PhD? How long did you track and study that? And first of all, congratulations on defending.
Thank you.
Why haven't
Thank you?
So I can read it.
It's uploading to ProQuest right now. Okay. And once they finish editing, I made sure it's available for everyone. So that way, you know, as many people can get their hands on it as possible. And then I'm looking at, I would have to split the paper into 2 different papers to publish in separate journals, because there's a coach-athlete relationship component, and then there's like a mood component to it, which is kind of like how coach interactions affect our mood during or after training sessions. But the initial like impetus for getting started on this specific thesis, and it's the coach-athlete relationship in online powerlifting coaching. So it's the first really online coaching study as well. Yeah. And what I wanted to look at was, okay, we all can see online coaching's here to stay. It's going to be around for a long time. And it's starting to be seen in more and more sports. It's not just barbell sports. It's being seen in golf. It's being seen in baseball, tennis, like all sorts of different sports can utilize, film this, send it back to me. Let's talk about your training program, right? And what really interested me was there's all sorts of different like communication frequencies between these online coaches. Some it's once a month. Here's a 4-week chunk of programming. If you have questions, wait till the next month. Other ones, it's once a week. Other ones, it's daily. And I kind of just wanted to get to the bottom of what I thought would be a good communication schedule with intermediate powerlifters, okay, right? So not like your elites, not your brand new newbies or something, but just like what most coaches, you know, clientele is going to be made up of. It's probably intermediates, right? And so my dissertation chair, James, asked me a really good question, because originally I wanted it to be everyday coaching communication versus once a week coaching communication. And James asked me, Dave, what would you rather do in your coaching practice? Even if you knew one was better than the other, which one would you pick? And I said, I would rather give coaching feedback every single training session, because I'm an in-person coach, and that's more comfortable for me in the way I coach and the way I interact with my athletes, right? And so from that point, we decided, okay, so we don't need to compare everyday coaching communication to once a week coaching communication. Instead, how about we just do a study with either, what it ended up being was, you would have coaching communication randomized throughout a week for 12 weeks, and it would either happen before you trained, after you trained, or not at all for that day. And if it was a not at all for that day, all that training info that would normally be commented on and give feedback to would just get pushed to your next coaching interaction day. Mm-hmm. So we randomized that for 12 weeks. We had 20 study participants that most made it through COVID, right? Right in the middle. So it was, that was definitely challenging, running a remote study in the middle of that. But the participants made it through, and they fucking survived and did great. So it worked out, right? And then what I did was we had the coach-athlete relationship questionnaire, which just measures components of the coach-athlete relationship, which are closeness, how close a coach and athlete are, in their relationship. There's commitment, which is how committed the coach and athlete are to the training relationship. And then there's complementarity, which is how well the coach and athlete work together within that coaching relationship. And so we gave them a pre-test before that 20-week or 12-week period started. And then every 4 weeks, so at weeks 4, weeks 8, and weeks 12, we did a follow-up testing. And what we found was over the course of that 12 weeks with randomized communication, so it ended up, the math said about 2/3 of their of their training sessions had coaching feedback. Okay. So it was a pretty good ratio. And just with 2/3 of those sessions having coaching feedback, there were very large, significant improvements in that coach-athlete relationship just over 12 weeks, right? Even knowing that we weren't going to be working together after that coaching, study. And so it was really surprising to me that just by having a good coaching frequency with your lifters and being authentic, right? And just really pushing as a coach, that how much progress you can really make in just 12 weeks.
Absolutely fascinating. And that goes to show you both in the coach level and the athlete level, coaches, give as much feedback as you can.
Yes.
And ask for as much feedback as you can. What I mean by that is, it's just saying, hey, can I have feedback? It's sending variants of videos. Like, I have a lot of athletes, I have to remind them, don't just send me your bench press every week because it's bench press.
Sure.
I don't want to see 2 sets of movement. Maybe send me your warm-ups, not the warm-up sets, the actual warm-ups I put in there for you. Maybe send me an accessory, because that's going to give me feedback on how you're moving everywhere. And maybe there's an area of opportunity for me as a coach to identify, hey, your dumbbell presses are like half range motion, they need to be full range motion. Or you're doing wall slides wrong, and I want you to do wall slides this way so I can correct that. Because people get limited to, in their mindset, squat, bench, deadlift. And yes, we are trying to improve your squat, bench, and deadlift, but there's areas around those that we can find an improvement to that will integrate into those big 3 lifts.
Yeah, that's what your accessories and warm-ups are for, right? Is to improve your competition skill. And so I think we see that a lot too, where, I'll tell lifters, hey, if you have a question, feel free to ask. Some people will choose to ask, some people choose to, figure it out themselves. Either way is great, but then what you can run into later on is maybe they see a video of you doing an exercise that you write for them, and it looks way different, right? And they're like, oh, that's how we're supposed to do it? Yeah. Like, shit, you've only been doing it for like 30 weeks.
Yeah. I get that often. They're like, oh, that's how that's done. I'm like, okay.
Oh. It's like that first search term on Google is always shit. It's always just the worst version.
They pay for that spot.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They're just gaming the system. That's not necessarily the best version of that.
Be careful about asking for questions though, because there's always that one person. If you'd rather fight a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses every time, without failing.
I fucking hate birds, right? So 100 of them, oh no, it'd be 100 horses that are duck-sized, right? I think I'd pick that over the duck-sized horse.
I'm surprised that Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds is the only movie that's like never been remade, and that's like the creepiest movie ever.
It's too much. We can't handle it now. Society, it break down.
That could actually happen. It scares the shit out of me. I don't like it either. I don't like anything that can fly. So not planes, not birds,
not planes. Yeah.
I have no control over a flying object. I don't want to do with it.
We need we need more train infrastructure in this country, like bullet trains. That's a way better trip coast to coast than getting in a tin can and flying.
Yeah, Florida's supposed to get one of those like high speed power train things, something or other. So we'll see what happens. I don't know where I would go with it. All right, so you own a gym.
Yep.
And you're a coach. How do you handle the dual responsibility of in-person and owning a gym and remote coaching? Because obviously, you can't answer the remote client.
Right. And I think that's just part of I consider myself, I'm a professional coach. That's my job, right? And so I have office hours where I'm at the gym, I'm coaching in person, that's what I'm working on. And then I have hours scheduled throughout the day. I typically do a morning, afternoon, and then an evening shift. Because I'm up from 4 a.m. to 8 or 9 in the morning for my first block, because I'll finish at the gym at like 8 a.m. I can get a lot of my online lifters done who are, other side of the world or East Coast or wherever it is that the time zone's different, that they're sending it while most people are asleep. I can get all them done first thing in the morning at 4 a.m. before I head off to the gym for in-person, get the rest of them done by 9:30. At that point, I've already had my next breakfast because I've gotten home from the gym at 8, went for my walk. Now I can come down for a nap till 12:30, right? I always try and nap on mornings. I have to wake up at 4 for work, and that's kind of like how I set up my schedule now, so I can always get that 7 to 8 hours, even if it's going to be broken up. And then I'll get up for my nap at noon, 12:30, finish the rest of my afternoon clients that have messaged me, and then I don't have to really check my phone again until 6, right? So I'll go back to the gym from 2:30 to 5:30, head home, have a brief little unwind, chill out with my wife, and then that last little bit, it's maybe like 4 or 5 people in the evening, so it's really not that bad, as long as I just like stay on top of that schedule. I think that's the hardest part, and there's like little things you can do, like I turned off WhatsApp notifications, so I have to like physically click the app in order to pop it, and just see what clients are doing, because I do, because you're working all day, you're coaching all day. It's really easy to just get sucked back into continuously coaching. And there's days I do it, whether it's because I'm home alone or whatever else, but like those days where you just coach from the moment you wake up to the minute you go to bed at night, they're really draining, and you have to be careful about when those are going to happen. And if you're, beholden to and responsible to your wife and your kids and, other people in your life, it's really... It really sucks how easy it is for me to get pulled out of being present and on my phone, right, working, rather than like it takes active focus for me to like put that away. Maybe I'll put it in a different room so I don't even see it, right, and like have that present time, in the real world.
So there was,
but it's tricky because I just get caught up coaching all stinking day.
oh, absolutely. I used to be there. I used to do the same thing. And
Yeah.
4 key takeaways there. One, it's very important to have next breakfast. I don't know if you guys caught
Yeah.
it. Next breakfast.
Second breakfast, bro. The Hobbit diet.
It's like a Lord of the Rings second breakfast.
Yeah, exactly.
I live that same lifestyle, so I hear you. I eat 8 times a day.
So, like the first breakfast, right? Like it's a little bit of coffee, maybe a yogurt or something. Then you're good. You'll have like a protein shake at the gym. It's that next breakfast. That's the one you're looking forward to.
It's the warm-up breakfast for the full meal. Yeah, got it.
So stoke that hunger.
He's getting recovery, mental and physical. There was a nap in there. That was something I used to do. I would take like a 20, 30-minute nap. It resets your brain. It calms yourself down. It allows you to recover because you are still also an athlete and a person.
Yeah.
Third, of time away from your phone. People forget that. And that's same. I have my phone's on Do Not Disturb. Notifications are shut off. I have to open the app to find it. And then the fourth was office hours. So I cannot respond from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. You will burn out. You can't be available to do that. And no one should even have that expectation, because that should cost a lot. In-person training is something like $60, $100 on your education level and your experience level. So unless they're willing to pay, $100 every week for something, you're not going to expect that. And if you want to, we can work something out. I'll do it.
Yeah, totally.
I love fun. Well, but you have office hours. I have office hours coaching. I won't answer emails and stuff, but that's the reason why I don't give my number out as much anymore, is so I can have hours from like 1:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. while I will come back and forth to answer those messages, because it was excessively burning out, because this also is, to some capacity, a 7-day week profession.
Yeah, it really is. It's, Fridays is probably like my least work day, but then I'm doing a Q&A, right? And then Saturdays, again, a lower like work day, but Saturdays is when we do team training at the gym. And that's a 3.5 hour workout, right?
God, I used to have that with strongman, heading out to Heath's house. It was 4 hours of strongman team training. I miss that so much. Granted, it was actually like 5 minutes of lifting and 3.5 hours of setup.
Totally. Or it's like 40 minutes on like drinking pre-workout and eating snacks and stuff like that and just shooting the shit.
But that's something I want to talk to you about because you and I have
Yeah.
had this discussion a lot privately. And let's make it public. It's not that sexy. Arousal. It sounds sexier than I'm going to take it to be.
Okay.
But Dave and I have a similar philosophy of saving arousal for when it matters. And so I'm going to talk about how he will hype himself up to Disney music. So when he used to send me videos, he was literally getting ready to deadlift, and he's dancing to the bar to like the Moana and like all these
Like
songs.
Let It Go. Yeah.
I think your favorite is like the Tarzan soundtrack, if I'm not mistaken.
Dude, Phil Collins killed that soundtrack. It's so freaking strong. That shit's solid, man.
You cannot help but love this man. Phil Collins is good. This is like natural, American Psycho. You and I are obsessing about Phil Collins over here.
The subtleties. It's that little watermark in the corner. Yeah.
Talk about the arousal, because there's a lot of people who will use ammonia every single session, smack themselves on the back, amp up, listen to metal. Let's talk about what people lose here is the fatigue to recovery ratio, okay? So you can amp yourself up, and eventually you have a repeated bout effect. If you're not familiar with what that is, just type into Google repeated bout effect. The arousal method gets less and less and less each time you do that, and it doesn't have any carryover, but you're now dependent upon it as a ritual. And so when it comes to meet time, my philosophy is you don't actually have the amp up and the arousal because you've conditioned yourself to it versus never training for it and then having it on meet day.
Yeah. To me, your arousal state, it's all internal, right? I don't need to be relying on anything that's going outside of my mind, right, to get me hyped up. It's because I'm not going to have control over the music on meet day. I'm not going to have control over what mono it is, what bar they're using, what chalk's in the chalk bowl. There's a billion things I don't have control over, but I have control over my breath. I have control over the visual imagery that I'm seeing in my brain of me completing that lift, going through it from start to finish, how I'm going to approach the bar, how I'm going to touch the bar, what it's going to feel like on my back, the tightness I'm going to create, and the explosiveness I'm going to have when I come up into lockout. All those things I'm just going over in my head, just exactly how I want it to be, and then I just go and execute on the platform. I have a little phrase that I just tell myself, and I just say it out loud. I say open. And that's me putting away everything that happened prior to that lift, everything that's going to happen after that lift, and just being present, feeling everything in my body as I'm getting up to the bar and getting ready to execute. And that's something, if I can do that same ritual, that same sequence every single time I'm at the gym, right now I can start to test it and train that visual imagery and train that arousal curve, right? By putting on silly music, by having people have conversations or shit. I know people that lose their mind when people walk in front of them while they're training or squatting or deadlifting, right? Fucking walk right in front of me. I don't see you. I've cleared the mechanism. What's happening right now is just a function of mind-muscle connection, right? And being able to train that arousal state in a variety of uncomfortable or comfortable environments just provides you with that much more efficacy on meet day, where I can go back and look at this last meet that I did, and I'm just in the zone. I don't remember what song was playing. I don't remember what the announcers were saying. I just have my best friend Robin in my ear just telling me to go to work. Lead me, war leader, right? And just fucking go out there. Like, I'm pumped. I'm ready to fucking go. I don't need anything else, right? Like, all that power is sitting up here in your mind. And for something like, I do mental reps picturing my competition lift every single day, multiple times a day. So for me to like go in and then do it, cool. That's what I've been practicing in my head. This is what I get to finally feel. So if anything, that excitement, I have to bring it back down because I'm getting too, if anything, too hyped and too excited. Oh, I finally get to go do this on the platform. This is the best fucking part. And so for me, just controlling my breaths, getting into a good rhythm, seeing what I want to see visually, and going through my steps just sets me up for success every single time I walk up to that platform, and I don't miss on stupid shit. The only time I miss is like, oh, it's too heavy that day. Good. Now I know what I got to work on for the next time I want to do that weight.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that just popped up. Need to really, try that mental rehearsal for competition. That's how I view every training session. And that's what Dave was just saying. Use every training session as mental rehearsal for the competition, which is why he takes away the controlled variables. The controlled variables of he's not going to pick the music in the meet, and he's not going to pick the room. He can't decide who's standing still and who's walking in front of him or not walking in front of him. So the idea is training with a mild dose of chaos and low arousal, so when you can dial it clicks.
Yeah, controlled chaos, right?
Moron, yeah, controlled chaos. of mentally getting used to it. Because what you're describing is getting used to an environment where you're not in control of anything other than how you the lift.
One, yeah, and it's like, especially like you feel that heart rate really start to race and pound, and your body and nervous system are really priming you for performance, right? If anything, that's when you need the most control. Like if you just get up into that bar and lose all sense of your head button shit, giving yourself bleedy face and concussions, like Krill, that's just one more strike against you in terms of like your potential to hit that lift and stay in the position that you need to stay. Like for me, and just the amount of like presence and awareness I need to hit that lift successfully, I can't be out of control because I need to feel like my root on the ground. I need to feel my hip flexors flexing. I need to feel my glutes squeezing through, my brace, right? Like that global tension. If I'm just out of my head, losing my mind, I'm not going to feel any tension and I'm going to shake. And I fucking hate shaking under the bar. And it's just like when you just can't control it because it's fucking 8:04. What else are you going to do? Like, yep. I don't die. Here we go.
I've taken it.
Yes.
Before I get to the bar, and then the bar weighs me down, so I stop shaking. That's the level of caffeine I'm at.
Oh my god. Yeah.
I have that kind of tolerance until I'm like, okay, we've exceeded the threshold today.
That was one bang too far.
Well, the problem is, Dave, I don't stop at one bang.
Yeah, just keep going. Keep them on tap.
I was talking to Andrew Clayton a little bit yesterday.
Yeah.
His table talk was fantastic. I've known Andrew Clayton since he was literally like 14 years old or 15 years old. Let me tell you a fun story about Andrew Clayton. I'm going to bring him on at some point too.
Awesome.
Because this is a man who understands the intangibles of competition more than probably any other professional strongman or strongman coach. He was giving variables such as the shoes you wear, the surface you're running on, the type of handle, the environment, whether it's indoor, outdoor, anything. This man understands the intangibles, which is one of the reasons why I want to have him on, because powerlifting is the same way, whether you realize it or not. Yeah. Of a walkout, what type of wraps you're using, what type of shoes you're using, where your bar position is. There's intangibles that you have to realize for each lifter if you're customizing program. Yeah. But, that's one of the things that, we were talking about just now is what you can control, what you can't control. And he looks at the training aspect of putting those things into the training aspect so you're already prepared for it on meet day. That's what we're talking about with the arousal and the visualization. Yeah. And we brought it up because in the Table Talk podcast, he was trying to get as high as he could off of caffeine. I think to conquer his nerves for it. I don't know. But he was trying to get like 1,000 milligrams of caffeine just for the talk. So at the end, he's like shaking.
He's like logging it in his little journal, right? Like, okay, 1,000. This seems to be the cap.
See, I was uncaffeinated from mine to some degree. Like I trained there in the morning, and then it was a little bit delayed because it was the first one to move the table to the corner, and they're making sure that the lighting was good and the sound was good and there's no reverb. And this is the last episode they did before they added bathroom breaks in there. And I had watched many, and I knew there were bathroom breaks, and they're like 3 hours long. So I'm consuming like no water. I'm trying my best. And then like the week after they started back up and they had bathroom breaks, I'm like, you son of a bitch. I could have been caffeinated.
You're just dehydrated as shit, but you looked super jacked and veiny at least.
Yeah, it was also the week of Christmas. It was like 7 degrees there, and I'm from Florida. I was like, why did I agree to this? Oh, so bad. But it was a lot of fun. But having the conversation with you is the same as having a conversation with Dave. It's like I do know you for years, but like you could sit down in a bar talking to your friend, which is also want to talk about. Your coaching style isn't the same as some people are very, I'm going to be as kind as possible, dull. They can't unspeak science. They don't have the ability to put things in layman's terms or make it digestible. And coming from your aspect of PhD level education, how do you find a way to simplify the cues and the techniques and the things you want to give an athlete or anyone even on Reddit, because you write in a format as a high school student can understand it? Not that you're putting it in minuscule terminology or undermining its importance, but you have the ability to speak from science to human without any interchangeable parts in between.
I think a lot of it comes down to I really benefited from the coaches I grew up receiving coaching from, and then also like my professors I had in undergrad, and I had my dad as a coach growing up, who's in my opinion like just the quintessential perfect coach. He's a national level soccer coach who's still doing it, in his 60s, working with little kids and growing them all the way up into D1 recruits as 20-year-olds. And so that's kind of like my first experience running soccer clinics with my dad at 10 years old on like, okay, well, we're going to be seeing these kids a lot. Watch what you can really do after, a couple of years with with an athlete, let alone like a decade. And seeing how my dad would bring really complicated, tactical and drills down to like 5-year-olds.
Okay.
And then how he talks to 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds. And you kind of see it start to build a little bit more. And then in college, I had a professor named Dr. Morgan who was just brilliant with anatomy and had all these rhymes, and just we realized really quick if we were laughing and like enjoying ourselves, it was so much easier to absorb the material than just be sprayed with a fire hose of information right from the get-go and just too much all at once, and you don't have time to absorb anything, and it's just kind of someone talking to you like they're way smarter than you and you're just going to have to catch up and get there one day, rather than really having mastery of the concepts they were instructing and being able to break that down into smaller bite-sized chunks, and build progression out of education. There wasn't a lot of educators I've had that have been able to do that, and I just kind of figured it out really early that you don't need to tell everyone everything at once. If you can just have some core concepts you're trying to get across. Once they complete those core concepts, then they can get into bigger conversations, right? And so I think what happens a lot of times is coaches can bombard clients with just a little bit too much information at once, unless it's the client specifically asking for more explanation. I think a lot of times you're just better off making a nice, simple instruction. Hey, this is how I want you to do this. This is why we want to do that. This is what it's going to help with. And then just leave it from there. And then wait for those conversations to come where you can create then further understanding. So it's kind of like the same thing with practice and learning new skills. Is we think, oh, I've got to study for this test. I'm going to do 5 hours today, 5 hours tomorrow, 5 hours Wednesday. I'm going to study 20 hours this week, and I'm just going to cover all this material. Well, you're not going to retain any of that information by the time it's testing time. But if you break that down into 45 to 90-minute chunks where you can reach a flow state normally and not have to rush it, spend some time in it, and then once you come out, notice that you come out like, oh, I'm writing a little bit slower, I'm getting distracted. Cool. Go take your break, because in that break, in that time away, your brain's going to coalesce all that information and cement it into either new knowledge, new motor pathways, whatever that learning experience was that you just did. That break is when that really sits into the brain. And a lot of times we get caught up with trying to test ourselves immediately in the moment rather than letting that knowledge build and that skill build over time with practice. And it's easy to go too long with practicing, just like it's easy to go too long with information, right? And so the shorter and more concise we can make things and just have repeated efforts of it, the better that helps with education, the better that helps with skill acquisition. They're all along kind of the same lines of how they work.
I agree. Yeah, I was listening to something recently that said things along the same line, is that when you're learning information, reading it in 25-minute chunks because most people will start to lose attention span around that time. So if you take a 5-minute break to process or review what you've read in those 25 minutes and then go back to it, you're more likely to retain it.
Yeah.
And it was hyper learning abilities, and it's putting it in short segments so you don't overlook things, because our short-term memories are going to hold 7 things, and then beyond that it gets pushed out. So it's taking the time to repeat those 7 things you just learned in the short block to try and push it into your long-term memory.
And then so that's kind of where we get into trouble, is because we wait too long a lot of times to start the learning, or we rush ourselves because we have a timeline or a meet or whatever it is that we have to accomplish at X date. So we're trying to cram all of this stuff into a tiny window, when maybe that window needs to be a lot bigger to fully understand and grasp those concepts. And so that's kind of like, as a coach, you get to maybe like 3 weeks out and you see maybe a client's rooting has really deteriorated, or they're bracing, right? Is it something where, do you stop having them do what they're doing now because you maybe see it as an injury mechanism coming on, or do you just let them finish out with the peak and then address it afterwards? There's all those little kind of subtleties that you have to weigh each time, when you're looking at, okay, what can we really accomplish before X date? But then also framing that to your lifters that, hey, just because the meet is over doesn't mean your skill acquisition's over, your skill building for better habits is over, right? Like, the meet's just testing you at this one point in time. But our training model and what we're trying to accomplish as lifters is much grander in scope. So don't try and rush things just for the sake of meet day, right? Like, let things occur as they should naturally occur, and not trying to cram too much into a short time period's part of that.
You mean you shouldn't hit the panic button and switch everything 2 weeks out?
Man, but it's like, it just as well as I do. Sometimes you do.
Hey,
sometimes you do.
I jump in the meets on 3 week notice. I don't have time to change.
Yeah, it's just sometimes like, well, that's what's going to happen. This isn't the norm, but it's going to happen now.
It's all data. I like to look at it. It's all data.
Yes, it's all data
collection. You're learning what worked, what didn't work, and you're going to learn for the next meet. So I always tell people, like, listen, during the prep, you're focused on this meet, and then what we're going to do is we're not going to think about any other meets until after this one, and then we're going to take the data we got and work forward from there and see what we've learned. Just had a lifter give me great intel and insight leading up to his meet. Now, Pat Thickey went 9 for 9, right? Pat Horvath, he's Pat Thickey. He went 9 for 9, and big platform PR squat. I think tied his best bench, and then platform PR deadlift, platform PR total, one best lifter. But he sent me an entire thing of all that he's data collected, everything over all his training cycles and where he made the most progress with each lift. The squat progression that we're working has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
His progression, it was all about form and position. Like, this is the longest I've ever had anyone do a pause deadlift all the way up. Like, I made him take his heaviest deadlift for the meet pause because he's so explosive. The idea was making sure he can maintain position, and it worked. He pulled 8 on.
Right.
He's like, are you sure you want to pause all the way? I'm like, dude, we're going to be about control, not power. You've already got the power. I need position.
Right.
And then bench, to keep his pec healthy, we really reduced his range of motion and his volume. But turns out he needs a lot of bench volume. He's actually got shown that his bench progresses the most with an extremely high amount of bench volume, not necessarily frequency, bench volume. So I started putting that in, and his bench came back up. So it's interesting how not just that he was paying attention, and that's something athletes don't do, and that's why I tell everyone you should have a logbook of what your lifts are, because you don't know what used to work in the past if you don't have it written down anywhere. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, well, and like in the case of like that bench volume too, right? Like, okay, my bench grows the most with volume, but your pecs have to have range of motion, and they have to be healthy to have that volume. And so a lot of times, right, like, oh, I need volume. Well, you need volume in a time where your pec can handle it. And if your pec can't handle it, the first thing you have to fix, right, is whatever mobility restrictions or tissue loading capacity issues, right, that are affecting that pec. And then once that's fixed, yeah, sure, load the shit out of it. Go back to that volume. I think, but when you just have the data but not the context of what that data means, right, that can throw people off a little bit. So like, no, it's always volume. Always volume and frequency for the bench. But, that was kind of my issue, was I would do 3-4 days a week benching, right, for 5-6 years. But I didn't have the loading capacity in my pecs, and I didn't have the range of motion. So taking away bench days allowed me to get some more range of motion back, work the mobility, because I wasn't training bench. I could just do my accessories and get the mobility that I needed out of my shoulders and out of my pec, especially the internal shoulder rotation, right? And then once I had that back, I went from just benching once a week for 2 years to, oh, now I can handle 2 really good heavy bench days, right, every training week, consistency. And I've been able to maintain that for 2 years now.
You don't say you have to earn it by doing things like mobility work and,
Yeah.
accessory work.
Yeah, crazy, right? Like,
I
well,
love
it's
it.
like that's why like the programming's the easiest part, because it's just writing numbers out, right? Good, go do your numbers, fine. But it's like if you don't have the context of what your body actually has to be able to do in order to meet those numbers, right? Like you can write a linear progression for an elite lifter, but they better have the fucking recovery on check, their sleep, their nutrition, right? Their gear, everything's got to be perfect if that's the way you want to run it, right? And so it's kind of like having to earn your program.
Absolutely.
Right, and make sure,
those literally had that same conversation with him, because this is the first time he's like meal prepped every meal for like honest done things. And then it showed because he was actually able to train at a lighter weight, so his weight cut was significantly easier and still perform on the platform because of all the things he did to earn it. So I love that philosophy that you're teaching this to people, and it's great because most people don't understand that or appreciate it. I want to talk about one more aspect, and you are a big proponent with your own training of velocity. You measure velocity, your squat, I believe, on your deadlift. I don't know if you measure on your bench. I haven't paid that much attention to your bench, because normally it's like whenever I see a video that somebody has like 500 pounds in their hands, I get penis envy and I don't watch. So
I can't watch it. So like I've done velocity on both bench and deadlift. For bench, it feels like I can grind out a lot more of a lift if I need to. Now I don't anymore. Because now it's fast enough and in the groove enough, and I know if I do grind, I'm going to be in a recovery deficit. So I kind of just instead try and stay away from a weight that's going to make me work a little too hard. And if I want to overload or do something heavier, I'll throw on a bench daddy. But for deadlift, I have used velocity in the past. It didn't seem to be super helpful with picking weights from week to week, just because I found my deadlift fatigue was really heavily affected by my squat and my bench. And so if my squat and my bench were really heavy that week, it was probably going to take a little bit out of my deadlift. And then it didn't really matter how fast it was going. It's only going to be like 595 or 600 or whatever. But the squat, especially for me, is really responsive to speed. And I know I have like target ranges for myself. Like if I'm at a 0.3, I call that around a 8 on my RPE scale. And if I'm at a 0.2, I call that a 9, right? So I can kind of pretty easily auto-regulate where I want to be. And then I'll do things like velocity cutoffs or drop-offs for squats. So let's say I want to do a set of 5 reps. And I do my first 3 reps, and they're all similar, mid 0.3s, right? And then let's say I do rep number 4, and I get a 0.22. And I just quickly assess to myself, is that because of technique, or is that because of fatigue? And if it's because of technique, maybe I'll try it again. Okay, good, got my speed back up again. It was technique. If it doesn't come back up, or I know it wasn't technique and it was just fatigue, I just terminate the set there. Right, just because there's research showing that at 15 to 20% of a speed drop off, there's no extra gains you're going to get after that. All those motor units, those high threshold motor units have already been recruited, right? And you're just causing fatigue afterwards. And they've done it in a bunch of exercises. They've done it on squats, they've done it on benches, deadlifts, pull-ups, things like that. And so that's just kind of a practice I took to my own training where, okay, I know I'm trying to train for a target speed zone, whatever rep range that is. And if I fall below it, it's just a quick check to, was that because of technique? If it was, good, correct it, move on. Or if it's because of fatigue, good, cut it there. And if I have sets left to do, I either answer whether I'm going to terminate that session, right, and just move on to something else, or if I'm going to drop the weight back down to get back in that speed zone that I want to be in.
I love that. I'm glad that I asked, because there's a lot of people who get married to a system and don't understand the difference between system and principles. And when using a velocity-based system, most people would use it on all three big lifts. And you're realizing that it didn't correlate to your bench and it didn't correlate to your deadlift, but it did correlate tremendously to your squat as far as managing your fatigue levels and your speed with the squat. And then the other two worked off of that, so you didn't need it for that.
Yeah.
That's huge for me, because some people really get stuck in a system and they don't know how to fit the person because that person doesn't fit their system. It's really principles. And so, if you didn't catch that, it only affects his squat. And when he tried to put on the bar for the deadlift, his fatigue left over from the squat is what affected his deadlift, not the velocity of the bar moving.
And then I have other lifters that have like an open barbell or whatever velocity tracking system, and they'll track their benches and they'll track their deadlifts. And then for them, those trends may not exist. They do get good carryover from their velocity tracking on deadlift or on bench. And it's actually funny because everyone's like velocity curve is pretty individual. From what I found, there's some similarities, but I stopped calling it meters per second, and I'll just call it like Jeff's per second or Chris per second, right? And I'll just use the lifter's name instead, because that's their specific curve, right? And if they're telling me that a bench that moved at 0.23 felt like a 7 and not an 8.5, right? Then cool, load it up. Let's see what happens. Nope, you're right, because you just did this set like a 0.13 and it didn't feel that bad to you. Whereas a 0.13 for me would feel like fucking death.
Yeah. It's going to depend very much on the individual, but it's another form.
Yeah.
I know the West Side stories, like when Louis kicked out the Tendo units, it was, the original method of measuring velocity was the Tendo units. And he kicked them out because guys started to try and race the machine rather than worry about their technical prowess. And their dynamic effort stuff was supposed to be about technique work and work capacity. Yes,
not necessarily driving up the speed.
But when you're in an environment where you have to win everything, they were trying to beat the machine.
But I tell you what, there's brilliance to that, because that's what we do on our squat warm-ups, right? It's a contest for who's the fucking fastest every single warm-up, especially when we have new people come in and we're all running that same mono together. Like, okay, we're starting at the bar. Boom, it better read over 1.3.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going up to a ret. It better read over a fucking meter. And it's just a contest to get it to read over a meter for as long as you can, right? And if you ended the day with the biggest squat at the fastest speed, like that's a fucking fun flex to have with your training crew, right? And sometimes you get beat, and it's fucking great. It's motivating as shit.
Copperhead says he's faster than you. Well, you're probably not a super heavyweight. He has second breakfast. You're winning the speed, but are you squatting what he is? I mean, come on.
Well, and that's a really cool one too, right? Is like you have someone maybe you're really tied with on weight, and you're just kind of jockeying back and forth for position that day. And, let's say you take your second to last warm up and it didn't quite move right. And then the next guy comes in and just smokes it. Like, okay, wait. I'm going to take my warm-up over again. Then you just took your warm-up over again. You're more confident. You're more focused. And it just really builds that momentum up in the session, right? And really charges that team atmosphere, which I'm all about training with a team nowadays. From having to train by myself for the majority of my training career to now having top 40 women's 148 lifters, right? And freaking having Monica and Robin there. Robin's pushing almost a 500 bench now. And if I don't stay over 50 pounds above him in a session, right, I feel like shit. And so it pushes me. That's why I did the 765 bench daddy the other day. I took 585 and I was like, oh, this feels like balls. I'm out of here. Robin comes and does it and smokes it. I was like, okay, put on 25s. And then I killed that, and I killed the 675. And then we just said, fuck it, put on the 765, and I smoked it.
Competition breeds success in a lot of people, as long as it's a friendly environment and not a kill environment. We talk about seminars is making sure your lifting environment is positive, not negative. Really, really hard because, it's friendly competition, not back competition.
Totally. And I think powerlifting, all the great meets, right? That's what you see the competitors and the coaches doing in the warm-up room is elevating everyone together, right? You got JP and Andy Wong and you, and everyone's loading plates. We're all fucking running monos for people in the back. Like, that's the kind of atmosphere you want to see, where if my competitor's doing their best, great. That means I'm going to be pushing for my best that day. And it takes everything up that notch. It doesn't have to be negative, and you could talk a little shit here and there and people are having fun, right? But it doesn't have to be something, like you said, negative, or dragging the atmosphere down or making it a not fun place to be. You know, when everyone's like-minded and focused on that same top performance they can put up themselves, it's just a charged room. And that's where that meat magic comes from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Rocky IV, best of the series?
Oof.
On the wall behind you, so I'm assuming.
I have both of them. Fucking Drago fighting Apollo and then at the win. I think Rocky IV is like an especially like close moment in my, or important movie moment in my life, because it was the first like real training montage I ever saw, right? Where he's got the fucking log and he's doing steps through the snow and just Drago! All that good barn workout. Like, you can still pull that fucking video up on YouTube and just get motivated to shit to train. And that's what got me into all this, right? It's like, I want to look like fucking Sylvester Stallone and fucking Schwarzenegger.
The guy who put together like every Rocky movie and the Creed movies training montage on YouTube. It's like 33 minutes long of like all the training montage. Like, if you watch Vision Quest, hell yeah, absolutely, it's one of the best.
Oh gosh, that stuff's important. You know, it's really important to have like kind of that connection. And that hype up, right? Because like, you want to talk about visualizations and stuff like that, like even just putting a little bit of Hearts on Fire, right, in your brain as you're doing your visualization and stuff like that. Or I'll meditate and I'll put on training songs, things like that, as I'm doing my visualizations. Like, that takes it up to a next level. In terms of like the intensity and how well that visualization works. Like, if you put a soundtrack to it, oh my gosh, you really suck yourself in.
It's anchoring. I don't remember the exact psychological term, but you're anchoring, which is, I want to say like pneumatic anchoring, perhaps is the terminology, but that's what you're doing. You're anchoring that motion to the lift. So you are creating a simulation process. They use a lot of neuro-linguistic programming with anchoring techniques. I wish I could remember the technical name right now, but you know, dude, so much fun.
Even better, you can just explain it in layman's terms.
Because layman's terms are all I got. I would love to do this again, because this is one of my talk to people that I don't get to see unless we're at like, you know, the U.S. Opens or the Showdown kind of meets. So this is fun for me. Reasons why I started this series, because people have so much information, more than I can give, and it comes out to information. Like, Dave literally, before we started like a week ago, he's like, "What do you want to talk about?" I'm like, "Dude, let's just let it flow." And so I flow the same flow state he talked about learning or visualizing. I like the flow state of these conversations and just picking out chunks that I hear that other people might not, because they're so useful to the coach, to the athlete, to even the gym owner. There's so many different things that people just drop without realizing it, and people don't pay attention to the keys. So I take the time to listen intently and then segment them. Dave, I always appreciate your time, man. You're one of the best in the business, so it's really, really my pleasure.
I appreciate it, Trevor. I really enjoyed this.
If anyone wants to contact you for coaching or for the gym, how do they get in hold of you?
You can message me here on Instagram at Dr. David Ops.
Yeah.
Or you can reach out to me at opsgym.com, which has our apparel attached to it, shopatops.com. And then I have some future projects coming up with Coach's Corner University as well, that'll provide more content for people with online coaching. Awesome. So it's gonna be a really good summer and rest of this year.
And then we're trying to get the whole like strength get together.
Yes.
We got to get Chris and settle down on a date for that. That'll be a lot of fun. Super cool. I will send you the link once it's finally up on YouTube. And guys, remember, if you couldn't stay on, it will be on YouTube as well, so you can watch it at your convenience or listen to it at your convenience. Dave, you are the best. I appreciate you, sir.
Appreciate you, Trevor. Thanks, man.
Have a great one.
You too.